Hey, we're here on the podcast with Mr. Jonathan Tuttle, and he is the host of the Accredited Investor Podcast and the Ultra High Net Worth Podcast. He's the upcoming author of Entrepreneurship is War, and he's also the founder of Get Podcast Bookings, which is a podcast booking agency for entrepreneurs, business owners, funds, and those looking to build brand authority, raise capital, and trust through podcast tours. And as if that wasn't enough, Jonathan is also the fund manager at Midwest Park Capital. They are a private investment firm providing select and approved accredited investors with exclusive access to high yield investment in the mobile home park vertical. And there's so much to talk about. Jonathan is all about digital marketing and consulting and e-com, and he gets around. He has a lot to say. So Jonathan, glad to be speaking with you.
Yeah, pleasure. It's a lot to talk about. It's a short amount of time.
Yeah, and it sounds like when is there time to sleep with all the different things you have? And so is that on purpose? Like, it seems like you juggle like 4 or 5 different things and they all they overlap, interrelate a little bit. Did that happen deliberately or did it just evolve into that?
It kind of evolved into it, but it really just comes down to niche commercial real estate. I've been in this space since 2005, mobile home parks, and then digital marketing. Everything's digital. So podcasting and digital marketing, and then I have some e-com stores. So just kind of those two niches. It sounds like a lot more. Build the right teams and system process. But yeah, it's basically those two things.
Ooh, I like that. So it's not just you. You have a team. That way you can say, hey, I'm the big picture guy. Here's what I want to do. I'll write the ship. And then other people run stuff. And it's so important, right? It's so underrated, this idea of like, well, what people are going to assist you on your journey. That way it's not just you being the bottleneck, and that way you're empowering others. And so out of all these different buckets, like, what excites you the most? What do you feel like talking about?
I think right now the most exciting is probably digital, because digital allows you like the travel freedom, and then the podcasting. I think what kind of combination of both those are kind of like the most exciting. The mobile home park space obviously is a marketing podcast, but like that's kind of like the boring business. Like people talk about laundromats, mobile home parks. It's the boring business, but the exciting stuff is the digital space because it's always evolving. It's always in the now and the current.
Well, great. Yeah. And I think that is a good point, that there are these boring businesses where you can cash flow or you can make money where it's dependable. But if that's all you did, you'd get so bored, right? You say, give me the exciting,
Exactly.
give me the podcasting, the digital marketing. And
Yeah.
so what is it about digital marketing and podcasting that you're currently focusing on? Like there's so many possibilities, but like what's your niche within that?
Yeah, so I have a few e-com stores. I've been in the space. I started my digital agency back in 2017, kind of ahead of the curve, hyper focused on basically Google Ads and Google SEO. And then, so I do practice what I preach. So I created print on demand stores. So I create specific niches. I rank it on high in Google. I have a partner called Custom Cat in Detroit. They do the fulfillment and they send the emails. So basically, as long as I do the digital marketing side of it, they do all the fulfillment. And it ships from the US. You don't have to worry about the whole drop shipping, like things with China and all the tariffs. So basically, no matter what economy goes through, t-shirts are always popular. I create niche focused t-shirts on different like political, dogs, city stores, things of that nature. So I practice what I preach in my digital marketing side. And then the podcast avenue is basically just, as you know, as a podcast host, is the best medium for getting your exposure out there at scale, getting right connections, get to meet people. They're doing other things that are interesting. And it's just kind of those combination of things are what excite me. And I think that's obviously, we know that's kind of the next generation of like marketing is going that direction with the podcast, and then obviously scaling online.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like you're worried about the way that AI just takes over. Like maybe someday cranking out the t-shirts and the e-com with the agentic AI, maybe it'll just do it for us, right? And maybe even better than us. It's a little scary about like what will be replaced. And so you look around like, okay, what won't be replaced, or what maybe won't be replaced right away? You think like the one-on-one personal connections, the podcasting. And so do you think people maybe get the wrong idea about podcasting, or do they maybe sometimes misunderstand it? Because sometimes people like, they'll just hang out with their friends, or they'll crank out the content, or they won't be consistent. So like, is there anything that like drives you crazy about maybe what's not done properly with podcasting?
Yeah, so a couple points, because this is my 68th podcast. So I've done my podcast tour, and then my two shows. And so one thing is like, because I also have my podcast booking agency, and the people think it's, as you as a host understand this value of this, and the people that have been on like enough podcasts, it's the easiest way to scale your message and get in front of the right people at scale. And so I think a lot of people think, oh, I'm just do like 1 or 2 podcasts. No, like no, it's a consistent thing, like anything in business. Like you have to do, you just do 1 episode a month. You got to do episodes, and it stacks up. And so same thing as a guest on a podcast, it's getting out your message to different audiences. And I think the biggest misconception, people think I'm just going to do one podcast and one big show and like everything's going to blow up, which is like anything in business. It's reputations, sets and reps. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger said, sets and reps. Like bodybuilding, everything sets and reps. And being consistent with anything in business, the same premise with podcasting. So I think that's the biggest misconception. People think they just be on one podcast and their life's going to change. Yeah, it could happen, but it's more about sets and reps and actually doing the repetitions and actually going on the shows. Actually, or even if you're like a consumer, listen to shows. Like I always, when I'm working out, I have just instead of music, I'll have like podcasts playing. And if you listen to one podcast per week or 2 podcasts per week, so you have this huge education by the end of the year. So everything's small steps stacked up over and over equals a big result over long term. So don't look at the short term picture. Look at all the little steps, and at the end of the year, you're like, wow, what was the transformation of where I was before? Here's where I'm at now, just by doing those little sets and reps each and every day.
I like it. Sets and reps, discipline, and things adding up. And you make up a lot of good points here. You say that the typical podcast listener, right? They're a serious person. They're someone that they're studying. They're not just reading the tweets or reading the TikToks. They're like going deep into about e-commerce or about real estate or about digital marketing. They're much high quality prospect, so to speak, versus someone who just maybe they landed on your webpage for a second and clicked off, checked your social media. If they're listening to your podcast, like that's huge. And so you're saying that if you're just recording your own podcast, you're limited there. You need to do a podcast tour, and you don't do just the one, you do many, because it's like business is full of unexpectedness, isn't it? Like the things that you think will pay off, they don't, and vice versa. The people that you think I'll be on this one show and they've got this huge audience, maybe that won't even be as good as someone who you haven't heard of or is less known. So why not do everything you can to make it work and do this podcast tour? And so you have this booking agency. And so you say you've been on 68 shows, I think you said. And so, but as far as like the, I don't know, the pace of it, right? The sprints. I'm sure if you told someone, hey, be on 68 shows, they just quit on you, right? So like, do you tell someone like, start with 1, start with 5? Like, how do you get someone to ramp up from 0 into it becoming a habit in their business?
Yeah, great question. And to your point, yeah, it's that's the biggest bottleneck. So the people that have been on tours or been on a lot of podcasts, like most of our clients are really high profile, like high profile celebrity type clients. They've already know the routine, and then they look for us just to be like, we save them time, energy, effort, resources, and it's a great value for them. But somebody's newbie and they haven't done this before, we have to create the compelling backstory. We have to create the questions. We have to build them up, and then find corresponding, shows that actually fit their niche. At the same time, we have to build the momentum. So we just can't go to like the biggest show. Some of these people have these expectations going to your point before, like, oh, I want to be on like Diary of a CEO. Like, yeah, that has like that's they charge 8,000 or 10,000 per episode for a 30-second split. They're not going to, 30-second advertisement. They're not just going to like have anybody they don't know as the first guest. So you have to build up kind of sets and reps. Goes back to my point, is basically just like in business, build a framework and then go forward from there. And then you go back to bigger shows, be like, hey, this person's been A, B, C, and D, and they're in demand. And maybe they haven't been the biggest shows yet, but they also have a compelling, unique story, which for your audience, this is a great angle because you could be one of the first few people to showcase this. And we also have the social proof that they know what they're talking about in other shows. They have good response on other shows. And so that's how we kind of do that framework. We're basically saying, hey, we do this. Here's we take you from here to A to Z, basically, to get to the next level. And then with podcasting, the biggest thing too is it's consistency. It's the same thing with just like anything in business. You just have to do like, your point is, we tell people 4 to 6 shows a month, but if your schedule is like your CEO and you're traveling a lot, we can work with you. You want to do 2 this month, 4 next month, 2 next month. A lot of the bigger shows or some of the shows they could book out 2 to 4 months in advance. So you could basically schedule it out with your schedule, and we make it streamlined, easy, and efficient for you. So it's not like we're doing like 100 shows or 50 shows a month. It could be over the course of a year, basically. So how your schedule works out, and it just becomes your marketing for your basically your main marketing channel for the entire year if you want to drag it out over a year. So that's kind of like how you have to look at it. It's not like And if you want to just do one per week, it could just be like kind of like having a conference call, one per week. And so you could do 50 shows, 52 shows, take 2 weeks off. 50 shows, it sounds like a lot, but 50 shows over the course of the year, it's just one per week, 30 minutes, 40 minutes each week. So
Yeah, and that's great. And that's a nice mix of like having your cake and eating it too, right? Because
yep.
you want the output, right? You want to have those 50 shows, but man, that sure sounds like a lot. But if you say, hey, if you can do 4 to 6 per month, if you can do one per week, more or less, depending on your schedule, make it a habit.
Yep.
It's important to for all these reasons that you and I know about, right? The SEO or finding your message, making the connections. So
100%.
to figure out a way to get on 50 shows, ideally with your booking agency, which we want to mention here, which is Get Podcast Bookings. And as far as the yeah, and we'll circle back to that, of course. But I'm always
Yeah.
thinking about with podcasting with the follow up, because I feel like almost no one does follow up, and I feel like I'm above average as a host as far as like going back to the guests. But I always feel bad about like I'm always like, oh, I was on some show like 4 years ago, I forgot to follow up. And even like the little bit I do, I know is above average, but it's nowhere close to where I think it needs to be. And so, like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, it takes so much work, even to like a lot of follow up just to get on a podcast, and then so many guests and hosts, you never hear from them again. So, how do we fix that? What do you think should be done follow up wise?
Yeah, I think, well, two points, because I, as a host, because I see it both sides, just like you as a host. Some of the people that reach out, they just try to do it themselves. And if you have the free time, you're trying to bootstrap, I get it. But a lot of times, like, they clearly haven't listened to the podcast. And that's why you have a dedicated, like, person that knows and say, hey, this is a good fit. So you reach out, like, oh, and they put a line in, like, I heard your show about this, and then I do this. And it's like, wait, it's not even correlated. It's a completely different niche. You clearly haven't listened. You're just spam emailing. And then to your point, to like the messaging follow up, that's the biggest thing, is like, as like our team, like they literally have to follow up. And it's yes, it's a lot of email, but it's literally like the depth of work is like, I reach out to the show, I have to follow up in 4 or 5 days. This is the right fit. Here's how we pitch it. We get to follow back up, schedule changes, we come back around. And it's always this constant movement of like, it's not easy work. And if you're a busy professional and you're, author, CEO, marketer, you run a business, you're not going to have time to train somebody. Even like when I'm trying to hire people, because I have 2 calls after this, 50% of people don't even show up for the call to even give the opportunities. And then you have to train them for like a month and a half. And then after that, like even that, like I've had like the people I have now are like the best, but like they only last like 1 or 2 weeks. So like, this is how much you have to do. Like you have to send like 200 emails a day. You have to follow up. You have to show me a demonstrate that you followed up. And then you have these time charts and everything else. And if you're just a small business doing this yourself, you're going to be spending all your time booking, following up, doing emails. And like you said, you're going to fall off, and the power is in the follow up, and then also like, how you pitch it. And so all that, we take all that off the plate, put your time back and freedom back into your thing. And you don't have to worry about trying to hire somebody, do the interview process. And this is what we do at really high level. And so it saves a lot of entrepreneurs a lot of time, effort, and resources, and it's great value. So, but yeah, to your point, it's like, it's a lot of follow-ups, a lot of work. It's tedious. I mean, when I have the pitches, I'm like, you could do this, but here's kind of like a couple of people are like, yeah, I tried it for a little bit. I don't want to do it.
Right.
What's your fee? Sign up. Because
Yeah,
they know the
because
work. They've done it. They're like, this is not, I don't want to do this. It's not even worth it, my time. So,
right, because without your team, you don't have that momentum that you spoke of, where it's
yeah.
like, well, 200 emails a day, how long can you sustain that? And even if you could, then that doesn't really leave time open for those other parts of your business that are important.
Actually, income producing activities.
Yeah, producing activities. And so, but then as far as like maybe a month, 3 months, 6 months after the podcast, do you have any process in place there, or any like best practices about like following up after the show?
Sure. I think that what I tell all the clients too is like, get somebody in Upwork, not Fiverr, because Fiverr is low quality, but get somebody like Upwork and try to find somebody that said, hey, and don't just try to get the cheapest one. Try to get somebody. What I always tell people, find an editor and like, hey, test like 2 or 3, just like in business when you're hiring different people. Hire 2 or 3 and kind of follow the trends. You saw what's going on with the Saratoga water and like some of the trends. Try to find somebody that could cut up videos. Take like, for example, if I was on your show, I'd take this up, cut it up, create like 2 or 3 different reels that are 30 seconds to a minute long, put them on YouTube, put them on Instagram, put them on TikTok. That's your content. And then you put that out, you share that with your email list, you share that with your LinkedIn audience. And this is like really, this is how organic growth works. providing high value content. And the main thing is just kind of test three different people, because then you have three different hooks and the first 3 seconds are obviously the most important part, to get that, to get that initial traction, see if the algorithm picks it up. But now you have content for the year each time you do a podcast, and it's authentic. It's you, not sharing somebody else's post or sharing another link. It's you. And so I think of people, if you cut up the content they're on in the podcast and reuse it, regurgitate it, use that for your email list too, and everything else, it becomes really high value.
Oh yeah, I agree, and a lot to sift through. And it seems like I don't know, like the old school way they used to say to make content is like start with keywords and build something up. But I love this kind of reverse sort of strategy, and I heard about it the first time from Gary Vee. He's like, you open up LinkedIn, and he's like, what do you see? You see all these reels that are from podcasts. So it's like they made the podcast first. So they made like all this ocean of information. And then you pick out what's good from what just came about from the conversation versus trying to make it work, which is like, that's back to getting to bottlenecks, it's like all this work just to make the magic happen. Why not just do your stuff and then find the magic within there? It's like, in a circus, they say like, you have a dog in the circus, they like teach the dog tricks, but then if there's a cat in the circus, they like see what the cat does, and they're like, hey, this cat like jumps up on that, and it's like, the cat already did, they just chose to highlight that. Like with podcasts, you just see what's already working, and then you say, yeah, you get the 3 reels, all the platforms. It's a dream. It's what we want to do. And like there's so much to do in business, right? There's so many problems and struggles. And as far as your struggles, Mr. Jonathan, like, what have you gone through? Has there been any point in time when you really like had a rough go of it, weren't sure about continuing on? Anything stressful like that?
Oh, always business, always challenges. It's over here is thinning. You can't tell, but it's definitely thinning. I mean, that's part of business. Like you're paid to problem solve, and so the problems are always evolving. You can't study like it's real time. Obviously, now we have different challenges now with, it could be the tariffs. If you have products in different countries, that could be an issue that you didn't know was going to rise. Or if one things where you're scaling a digital business could be like the payment processors, like, hey, like PayPal, for example, or Stripe, like you're getting too much volume all of a sudden. And then they start holding your reserves and holding your money for 3 months. And that's your cash flow for buying inventory, buying products. And so there's always evolving issues as a digital marketer or any business. Just got to be able to problem solve as you go. And I think the biggest issue is every year there's always new issues. Like last year I had like e-com stores that did really, really well. This year, because they were like political stores, obviously those dropped. And so like I was trying to sell them, but like I missed the time period. But the biggest challenge is, like, I think always every business owner has, finding quality talent, finding people that are reliable. Cash flow issues, basically, if you're scaling, like I'm scaling, like you mentioned, I'm scaling different businesses. So like if I could find partners that could bring some cash, or we could bring strategic partnerships. So because certain things are scaling, you need cash flow for each thing. And then I also have real estate. Well, real estate holds your cash. It's locked. Yeah, you have like, it's worth a decent amount, but like you can pull the equity out, but you want to put it back into a 1031 into another property. So you're not putting into your cash flow properties. And so obviously cash flow is an issue. Then you have to like demonstrate to the banks or lenders, like, hey, like what's your risk tolerance and like how is your cash flow? And so with any businesses, I think the biggest thing is cash flow, available to cash, hiring employees. It's all the same things. I like the digital component because you could be very nimble, very flexible. Your risk tolerance is as much. Like, for example, if you're launching a store, like I always tell people going to the consulting point for revenue send is you need 15, 20,000 to test, like even just like data set, like for Facebook, Google ads, to really get a point to see if you have a viable product market fit. And so people think, oh, I'm just gonna test with like a couple $100. I'm gonna do social media. Well, unless you're like, you have a huge amount of organic traffic, like you need to get traffic to get, product market, get real live feedback in real time. And real life feedback is going to be, are they subscribing? Are they, opening emails, downloading the podcast? Are they willing to do the freemium, pay the product, not just say, hey, this is great, but then there's no data in the back end. So like actually get real data on a company when you're launching anything digital. I would say it's like 15, 20,000. So understanding that's another challenge. So if you're just launching a business and you're trying to bootstrap it, like realistically, you might need a cash partner to partner up with if you have a skill set. And so just being nimble. And then I think those are the biggest 4. And then the other things after that, once you get flowing, like the biggest, I just saw like a reel the other day, and the guy's like, he's saying like after you've gone through the struggles of being an entrepreneur for a long time, and all of a sudden like one of them goes, and like I've had a couple like go really well, but you've had the journey of seeing ups and downs, and then once in a while they'll just take off, and you're like, wait, am I doing something wrong? Is something, what's going to happen here?
Sure.
And then like, just you go through the struggles and the gauntlet, and then once in a while you have one that just goes through the roof, and you're like, wow, that's crazy. What do I have to do? And then that's part of the entrepreneur journey. And then you just got to go on to the next one, and it's just part of the cycle of entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, I love the awareness that you've expressed here. Like, there's something to be said about like the nitty gritty, sharing the numbers and saying, hey, you need to have 50 podcasts. You need to put 15,000 into ads.
Yep.
You need like this type of strategic partner. Like, it's one thing to say, oh, like pursue your dream and set this stuff up, but you're like, hey, there's some essential components. And then also,
Yep.
if you're dealing with the stress, problem, struggles, failure, it seems to be helpful to put a label on it, right? And you saying like, my situation, of course, everyone's unique, but you're like, hey, like this isn't so unique. There's the seasonal thing happening with the e-commerce, or this is going away on this platform, right? They're banning the political stuff, or I could have sold it at this point and I missed the window. And so you put that label on it, and it's like, hey, it's not bad. That's just what the situation is. And that seems
Yep.
to help us somewhat moving forward. With the goal, it seems to be, well, there's all these entrepreneurial ups and downs. And it's like, what the heck am I doing it for? You're doing it for those rare times when your business really blows up and goes somewhere and does something. And you say, well, cool, all those other failures that led me to the success, that's what was worth it. That's where the magic and the fun is. And I want to make sure that we can work in somewhat of a case study success story if we can. So you've helped people with, real estate, e-commerce, podcasting. Is there like someone that you've mentored or helped out, or a client or someone who, because they have come across you, Mr. Jonathan Tuttle, their life has completely changed for the better?
Yeah. So I have a client that does both the digital marketing side. I help with the Google ads and the Google SEO, and then additionally do with the podcast. And he was a new lawyer. And so I just got him on my team got him on a podcast book, or like a show. And the lawyer's like, this is unheard of, because I never get somebody that's like, usually the first year, 2 or 3 years in a lawyer, you're not even on, like, you're struggling to get your first couple clients. And here you're on my podcast. And then you talk a story. He's like, yeah, I've been 12 years. It's the same process. And then on the other side of it, he's got some referral partners, some lawyers, but he's even told me personally, just drop those down to pretty much minimum, because I'm getting like 35, 40 leads a day on Google ads. Like, I wish my business was getting that from Google ads. Like, he does employment law. So obviously and he works in 9 different cities, but it's crazy because I'm like, man, I wish I was getting those numbers. He's getting leads for like crazy, and he's converting them, and he's scaling it astronomical. Like he'll be a client for life, I'm assuming. It's literally going to take him to like 8-figure business. And it's like, I took him from the ground up, from the very startup. When most people have a struggle, like he went from day one, trusted the process. Here's how it is. Here, we'll do the Google ads. Here's the SEO. And now he's doing the podcast because he follows, and it's just exploding. But it was like, I wish I was getting the same results. He's got a great niche. But we do really well with like high level Google ads. So if you're spending like 10,000 plus a month, not like if you're spending 1 or 2,000, like most people can kind of like, it's not going to be much difference. But if you're spending 10,000 plus a month on Google ads, or if you really want to dominate your market on SEO, that's where revenue side comes in. But yeah, it's crazy because like I see his numbers, I'm like, holy crap! I wish I was getting the same ones. I can't even replicate it for my own business, but like he's got a hot niche, right offer, great, like everything's just executed at a high level, and like, but like from just starting off from zero, from leaving his old firm. And it's funny because like we're dominating his old firm. It's a national firm. I like ahead of him on Google. He loves it. So it's crazy though, but it's it comes down to marketing. Obviously, main thesis of this is like right offer, right product, right market, and he's getting everything right at the right level. So
Very nice. Right offer, right product, right market. And it probably feels good for your former employer to not have as much reach as you, right? To not be as highly ranked as you. And
he loves
I
it.
think,
Yep.
what comes to mind is there's some saying I forgot about for a bunch of years till just now. I think it's like one person can't make a pencil, right? If someone like chopped down a tree to make the wood, someone else would like get the rubber for the eraser, the graphite for the inside. There's like just a regular, I mean, this is a pen, but like a pencil, like it's all these different components. And so there's something to be said about like, don't just be one person that does it all, right? This employment lawyer, he's really good at what he does, but he can't do the ads, and you can do the ads, but you can't do the lawyering. And if both of you had never met and were trying to make it work, it just on your own, it wouldn't work. But because you say, hey, here's my lane, here's this guy's lane, I want him to get me on podcasts, I want him to get my PPC, my SEO, my ecom, my real estate figured out, whatever the problem is, then that's where Mr. Jonathan Tuttle and his many companies and his many solutions come in. And how does someone know if they're a right fit? We mentioned all these different businesses, but like, how does someone know if they're that e-commerce brand or that employment lawyer that needs the PPC? Like, how does someone know if they're a good candidate for you?
Sure, great question. So yeah, the biggest thing for revenue send is basically somebody spends $10,000 a month, because that's where you're going to make a measurable difference. If you're only spending, $50-100 a day, it's really hard to like give a drastic difference. But if you're spending 10,000 plus a month, and we could say, hey, here's your bottlenecks, here's how we could scale it. Same with SEO. But like even SEO, we don't like, it's a long-term play. It's literally just a long process. That's what revenue send does. The get podcast bookings ideally for people that want to do 20, 40, 60 episodes, entrepreneurs, authors, thought leaders, people raising capital, marketers, people selling a service, but they also have to be somebody willing to be able to speak and also have like a little background behind them, because sometimes 9 out of 10 people, like our clients, are like real big, but we start out with some smaller people and get them on really huge podcasts. But if you're just like, you've never done anything before and you have like 100 followers, and like, because the shows, look at this, if you don't have any something they could talk about or something like looks credible, it's really hard for us to. So we have to have something to work with and get podcast bookings. And then the fund is just people that have already made it and they just want a passive income. That's Midwest Park Capital. And just they want the tax benefits, which, who knows, this could be different. They might get rid of capital gains. So that was our biggest thing, was like, hey, you could mitigate your taxes, but mobile home parks have been the safest, especially during recessions. And I've been in this space since 2005. And I speak on some of the biggest stages in the country for that. So those are 3 niches, basically. Then the podcast, just like you, accredited investor or ultra high net worth. Accredited investor is mostly a wide spectrum of thought leaders in different niches. And then the ultra high net worth podcast is basically, which I only do very few because it's $100 million minimum exit or raise or something of that. And then I always get people going back to the beginning of the conversation. They reach out like, oh, I heard your conversation. I have this small company, nothing against small company, but like, that's not the thesis of the show.
Right.
And so, but yeah, the Accredited Investor Podcast, I'll try that with podcast. Those are my podcasts. So, but get podcast bookings if you're looking to do a tour, and revenue send if you're looking for digital consulting. It's more for people looking to scale. It's not like you have something that's working, we take it to the next level.
Very cool. And so you said getpodcastbookings.com, is that right?
Yeah.
And then the midwestparkcapital.com, and then revenuesend.com.
Yep.
All right, very cool. Well, that makes it nice and simple, right? Nice and uniform. And I'm definitely making a mental note because
sorry,
right,
True, no .io.
no .io, .ai, yeah. So I'm making a mental note because there's definitely something valuable that you said in here of this idea of getting the momentum figured out, right? You want to be on podcasts. Yeah. Well, those podcast hosts, including me, including you, whatever the show is, they'll look at your social profile just to see what your follower size is, not to be shallow, superficial, but to see if you're worthwhile, and also to see if you have previously appeared on other shows. And so if you look at these successful people, the Gary V's of the world and lesser, they're always on shows. So figure out a way to get yourself on some shows, get some kind of a social following. That way, when you are on other shows, you have an easier time as you go along. And there's always this stress about like, was the podcasting space too crowded? Is there too many shows? Well, hey, you can use that to your advantage, because you look at what you've done with the Accredited Investor Podcast. You say, hey, here's a really specific type of person, and I only want to have this person on my show. And these days with the socials and the LinkedIn, it's out there. We can find them, and we can be picky just because there's so many people, so many shows. And so that's a interesting, fascinating, modern way of going about that. And so we said that there is the Get Podcast Bookings website, Midwest Park Capital, and then revenue send. And as far as this upcoming book you have, Entrepreneurship is War, do you have anything to say about that?
Well, to recap what you said, that's 100% right. Like the best tip or tidbit from this episode would be hyper focus. The algorithm's really hyper focused on just creating content for, like, you could have like 5 different Instagram profiles, but if you just did one for like travel, because I love traveling, or if you did one for accredited investors, or if you like marketers, really hyper focus and finding your niche, the algorithms love it. If you look at the biggest people online, they really focus on one thing, they sell it over and over and over. And to your point to the podcast, it's literally just building momentum over and over and over. And to the book is kind of like, because I go to a lot of like the private equity. I speak on stage at like IMN, Family Office Club, and I'm just one of the stage speakers, some of the different events. And so I share some of the insights. I'm going to these conferences. I fly out to these conferences, and so it's not the average information you see that goes viral. People want to hear the viral stuff on Instagram. Like I heard a quote that's like, if you hear something viral on Instagram or TikTok, do the exact opposite.
Sure.
If 3 million people heard it, well, now we know the idea is burned out and it's be oversaturated, and or just not a good valid point. And so I think just sharing what the biggest movers and shakers, they're a little bit on Twitter. We know that X Twitter. But a lot of the stuff, they're not giving out their like strategies, like blatantly putting it out there. And so kind of like I do stuff I want to hear, like for example, when you go to family office events or talking about nuclear energy, like you're not hearing anything but talking about like they're investing in nuclear energy. You're not hearing that anywhere else. Like I'm not hearing like you're like nuclear, that's kind of risque, but like things like that where you hear like these inside information, like, well, follow what the really wealthy people are doing because they have some better information, a better data source because they have available access. And so I kind of want to share some insights there. Obviously, I'm not an influencer like to that level, so it's not going to blow up like crazy, but it's going to be for the people that, they want to get some like high level strategies, want to implement and take action, and hear what some of the people, if they didn't go to these conferences, here's what they're saying quietly and sharing it with, regular accredited investors, basically.
Yeah, I like that idea of don't follow the herd and look at what the actual wealthy players are doing. And so we've been speaking with Mr. Jonathan Tuttle, who's a creative problem solver, and he ethically serves others first. He's a Renaissance man. He has this accredited investor audience. We mentioned MidwestParkCapital.com, RevenueAscend.com, and GetPodcastBookings.com. Before I let you go, Mr. Jonathan, it's time for the scary part of the show where I try to put you on the spot. I ask for a helpful quote or lesson that has served you. You've already given us so many, but what do you have as far as capping off the show, a fun quote or lesson?
I kind of revert back to what I said. Unfollow the herd, basically, and do what the opposite of what everyone else is doing. I think, and like I remember the late great, what's his name? I can't think of his name. He passed away. He was a billionaire. I can't think of his name, but his thesis was always try to the riches are niches, and I can't remember his name. I should know this, but he passed away a couple years ago. But his focal point was always going to the niches where you could become an oligopoly or a monopoly, and so it goes back to my whole thesis of going to like hyper focus on niche. You don't have to have a huge audience. You could just, and like even ClickFunnels guy Russell Brunson always says 1,000 raving fans could be all you need to grow a thriving business, or even 1,000 listeners to your podcast. Hyper focus on your niche and who the audience you want to serve, and aligning with that, and become everything. This is a pro tip: just engulf everything you can. Go to the conferences, listen to all the podcasts, read all the books, get in front of, hire the mentors. Go when you find a niche you want to go into. The riches are in niches. Go all in on it and try to see if you could become, because niche is a lot easier. It's a lot easier to go to niche. Like even with my e-com stores, I can't be Amazon. I can't have 100 different t-shirt stores, but I can find little different cities t-shirt stores. I got little dog breed t-shirt stores. Go for those little niches because you get a lot of traction, a lot easier, a lot less capital, and a lot faster. And that's how you could scale your business in a lot easier way in this competitive world we live in nowadays.
Very cool and great advice. The riches are in the niches, and you can find Mr. Jonathan Tuttle at LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Jonathan Tuttle1. And from there, you can get to all those amazing websites, get to all those links that we mentioned. And man, it's been a blast speaking with you, Jonathan. My mind's on fire with like 152 different ideas, but that's a good thing. It's time to hyper focus. And I appreciate you being on here and dispensing some of this wisdom. So thank you.
Pleasure. It was like great being on the podcast. I was excited. This is my first podcast in a while, so I was listening to your podcast for a while. I'm excited to be on. So it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Nice. You get that momentum back, right? Get back on some shows.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Exactly.